We have prepared press packets, which is to say that the statement that I'm getting ready to read that details some of the salient facts and also the law will be given to all of you verbatim. I'm going to read that in just a minute. We are also going to show you several pictures, still images, that were either taken by crime scene investigators or taken from video from body cameras. And hopefully those will also speak to this incredibly tragic incident. On Sunday, November 19, 2017 at 6:07 a.m., Stephen Hughes shot and killed Marine Corporal Edwin Estrada outside Hughes's residence. Hughes claimed he shot Estrada because Estrada attempted to forcefully enter his home twice, and Hughes was in fear for his life. First, I want to tell you a little bit about what we learned through this investigation about Corporal Edwin Estrada. 27 years of age, North Hollywood, California. He was a Marine and stationed in Jacksonville, North Carolina. Estrada did not have a criminal record. He had come to Wilmington for the Marine Ball on November 18 and did not go to that ball because he did not have the appropriate attire. Instead of attending the ball, we know from witness accounts that he drank at a bar in downtown Wilmington. He then met up with other Marines after the ball and went to multiple downtown bars. According to friends, Estrada originally planned to return to Jacksonville that night, but decided to stay in Wilmington, a room rented by another Marine at the Hilton where that ball was taking place. Estrada did not have his own room reservation. At some point in the evening, it is believed that Estrada's phone went dead. No one received a text or call from him after 9:25 p.m. that evening. At 1 a.m., Estrada was refused re-entry into the liquid room due to his level of impairment. At 2:15 a.m., Estrada is seen by another Marine on North Front Street. That Marine reported that Estrada was alone and appeared intoxicated. Estrada returned to the Hilton and was captured on video leaving the Hilton lobby after briefly visiting the front desk at 2:35 a.m. The Wilmington Police Department and the Sting Center within it was unable to locate Estrada on any available cameras throughout our downtown area, and there is no knowledge of his whereabouts between 2:35 a.m. until 6:07 a.m. Estrada is not believed to have been armed at any point during the evening. Now here's something about what we know the man to be Stephen Hughes, the shooter in this case. Hughes, age 36, of Wilmington, served in the United States Navy for 11 years and was honorably discharged. Hughes formerly worked as a law enforcement officer in Ellsworth, Maine. He lived at 273 North Front Street, where he rented the basement space of an optometrist's office. He resided in this space and also used it as his place of business. Hughes reports that on the evening of November 18, he went to Home Depot to buy supplies for his fish tank and had dinner with a friend at Nikki's restaurant downtown. Hughes went home after that and stayed up all night working on his fish tank until the time of this incident. Hughes had firearms in his residence and was a lawful possessor of those firearms. Hughes also does not have a criminal record. Now I want to tell you just a little bit about the location of 273 North Front Street. The front entrance is of an optometrist's office and it opens onto Front Street. There are stairs in the office leading to a lower level, which is where Hughes resided. The rear door of Hughes's residence is metal and opens outwardly into the former Water Street parking deck demolition site. This door has a deadbolt lock. The area immediately outside the door is a patio with plants and several air conditioning units. In legal terms, this area is known as the curtilage of the residence. The lower level has a short hallway and 2 steps leading up to the rear door. There is no lighting on the exterior of the rear door, and the demolition site had a head-high fence that surrounded the area. And this is what we're going to be showing you in just a few minutes with the photographs. Now I'd like to talk to you about the incident on November 2017. November 19 to be exact, at 6:07 a.m. ShotSpotter detected gunfire, recording 2 shots fired approximately 3 seconds apart. At 6:08 a.m., an employee with the Hilton Hotel called 911 to report hearing these gunshots. At 6:13 a.m., Hughes called 911 to report the shooting. At 6:16 a.m., in other words, 3 minutes later, officers from the Wilmington Police Department arrived at 273 North Front Street. Hughes, still on the phone with 911, flagged officers down at street level and led them through the optometrist's office, downstairs, and out to his patio, where they found Estrada's body. During this time, officer body camera footage captures rainy weather and that it was still dark outside, making it hard to see objects looking from within the residence to the outside area. The footage also shows the temporary fencing still intact encircling this back patio area, this curtilage area. Now the facts I'm going to relate to you, and I want to stress this, come from Hughes. According to Hughes, at approximately 6 a.m., he was inside his residence working on his fish tank. Hughes kept hearing a loud banging sound on the door of the rear entrance of the building. The banging got louder and sounded like someone was trying to kick in the back door. Hughes armed himself with his 9mm pistol and walked to the rear door. Hughes placed his pistol on a shelf beside the door and opened that door. When Hughes opened the door, Hughes was standing on the steps leading up to the door. Hughes was standing in the doorway. Estrada tried to forcefully enter the residence, according to Hughes. Hughes yelled at Estrada, "Hey," and Estrada stopped. Hughes retrieved his weapon from that area that I'll show you in pictures in just a minute, this shelf area in the hallway. Hughes retrieved his weapon from that and pointed it at Estrada. Hughes was standing in the doorway at this point. Hughes asked Estrada if, quote, he was out of his effing mind, end quote, and told Estrada to, quote, get down, end quote. Estrada told Hughes, quote, no, you get down, end quote. Hughes told Estrada to, quote, get the F out of here, end quote, and to, quote, leave, end quote. Estrada looked at Hughes, smiled and said, according to Hughes, quote, this is pure comedy, I'm going to get you, end quote. Estrada then lunged at Hughes, trying to forcefully enter the residence again, and Hughes fired 2 shots. Hughes could not tell where he was shooting Estrada because it was pitch dark outside. Hughes indicates that when Estrada lunged at him, he was in fear for his life. After shooting Estrada, Hughes did a protective sweep outside in case there were others in the area with Estrada. Hughes also maintains that he moved Estrada's body over with his foot to check for vitals. Hughes determined that Estrada was deceased. According to Hughes, he also did not have his cell phone at the time of the shooting and had to locate it to call 911. Hughes retrieved that cell phone and did call 911 at 6:13 a.m. to report the shooting. Now, I want to just very briefly detail the CSI investigation and show you some pictures of what we know about the physical evidence from this case. Hughes fired a 9mm pistol, and 2 shell casings were located inside the residence by the rear door. Estrada fell within the curtilage of Hughes's residence. His head was 7 feet 11 inches away from the rear door. His body fell parallel to the doorway with his feet closest to the air conditioning units. It is believed that Estrada was first shot in the face, which, according to the medical examiner, would not have been a debilitating injury. A second shot to the back of the neck was likely fatal. The exit wound from the first shot was next to the entrance wound of the second shot. Investigators interviewed another occupant of the building who was asleep prior to the incident. She awoke when she heard the shots fired, then saw Hughes outside on the patio on the phone. She could not offer any additional information. Investigators interviewed several Marines who were with Estrada early in the evening. They confirmed his movements prior to his departure from the Hilton lobby at 2:35 a.m., but no one was able to account for his whereabouts after that time. In other words, we have a gap between 2:35 a.m. and 6:07 that we tried to fill in through either video or through witnesses, and our investigation could not account for that time. Now, Hughes was cooperative and voluntarily gave an interview to the Wilmington Police Department. In addition to what I've already related, he claimed that he did not know Estrada before this incident. Hughes's phone records showed that he did not have contact with Estrada via text or phone call, and in fact he allowed us to voluntarily look through that cell phone without a search warrant. There is no evidence that Hughes and Estrada knew each other or had any prior encounters. There were no eyewitnesses to the shooting, and the only account of what happened, as I've said before, came from Hughes. So as of today, the investigation has not found any evidence that disputes Hughes' account of these events. So with these facts, I now want to tell you a little bit about the law. And I have stood before this community many times to talk about use of force cases involving our law enforcement partners and members of the public. And what I want to be clear on is that the standard, while it always involves reasonable use of force to repel a deadly threat, if it's being eminently used against you, it's going to change in some respects because we're talking about what's known as the defense of habitation, or the castle doctrine. And I'm going to canvass that law for you now. In January of 2018, members of the Wilmington Police Department, along with senior prosecutors in the district attorney's office, met in this very room and developed the evidence that I've shared with you to determine if there was a violation of the laws. As I said before, we have a shooting review team. In this case, we had 18 different people look at the facts and circumstances of this case in that 3-hour review. Let me state a few things at the outset. All life is sacred. As the North Carolina Court of Appeals recently said in State versus Bass, a North Carolina Court of Appeals case from just this past year, the law only gives the right for one person to take another's life in self-defense in two unique circumstances. The first is when a person reasonably believes that such force is necessary to prevent imminent death or great bodily harm to himself or herself or another. In other words, the right of self-defense or the defense of a third person. The second circumstance is under the defense of habitation laws, which were recently enacted by our North Carolina General Assembly in December of 2011. Now, the law has long held that a person's home is their castle, and there is no duty to retreat before using deadly force against an intruder. This castle doctrine, as I've said, is something that has been on the books for years in North Carolina and recently codified by the legislature and the Defense of Habitation statutes. The North Carolina legislature recently codified this, as I mentioned, in 2011. These statutes provide that a lawful occupant within their home, motor vehicle, or workplace does not have a duty to retreat and is justified in using deadly force against someone who is forcibly entering or attempting to enter their home, motor vehicle, or workplace. This protection is not limited to the actual structure of the home, but includes the curtilage of the home, which would be, quote, at least the yard around the dwelling house, as well as the area occupied by barns, cribs, and other outbuildings. That's case law that actually came down as early as 1955. So that curtilage area, in other words, includes that zone of protection we talk about when referencing this defensive habitation statute. The Act further provides that a homeowner need not guess the intentions of the intruder. Let me repeat that. The Act further provides that a homeowner need not guess about the intentions of the intruder. Rather, the law provides that, quote, a person who unlawfully and by force enters or attempts to enter a person's home, motor vehicle, or workplace is presumed to be doing so with the intent to commit an unlawful act involving force or violence, end quote. A lawful occupant who uses force in this circumstance, in this case Hughes, is, quote, and I'm quoting now 1451 of the codified Defense of Habitation statute, is, quote, justified using force and is immune from civil or criminal law for the use of such force, end quote. So as I said, a painstaking investigation involving hundreds of hours and dozens of hours more with prosecutors reviewing the law has taken place to confirm or refute the accounts of events told by Stephen Hughes. At this time, the Wilmington Police Department has found no evidence that disputes his account of events. Hughes claims that Estrada was attempting to forcefully enter his residence. Hughes had a lawful right to be in his home, and Estrada did not have a lawful right to attempt entry. Accordingly, Hughes was legally justified in using deadly force to stop him and is immune from criminal liability. At this time, the state will not bring charges against Stephen Hughes pursuant to North Carolina's Defense of Habitation laws. WPD has contacted Estrada's family to share this conclusion. Members of my office and the Wilmington Police Department also met at length with members of the Naval and Criminal Intelligence Services. And in fact, Robert Lee from NCIS is here with us today, and we really appreciate their cooperation throughout this. And we've obviously informed them of this decision prior to this press conference as well. So in conclusion, let me say, when deadly force is legally justified, is a highly fact-dependent inquiry that turns on the unique circumstances of every case. While this incident is not a crime, let me say it is a tragedy. It's a tragedy on many levels that could have been avoided. A young man who honorably served our country is dead. Another man who also honorably served our country must live with the realization that he took a fellow serviceman's life. This is a cautionary tale. Those who wander while highly intoxicated may be perceived as a threat, even if they're not, and lose the protection of the laws, and may lose their very lives in the process. And those who resort to self-help rather than calling 911, they can create a situation that, while legally excused, turns unnecessarily fatal. Everyone in our community should wish for a different outcome with the benefit of hindsight. And before I turn it over to Ralph Evangelist, and again, I want to thank his officers for all the attention they've given this case, not just on the minutes afterwards, which you're about to see some of the footage from, but in the weeks and weeks afterwards. This picture is taken approximately 10 minutes